And how do I know if this is who my child is or if it's just a phase? How do we decide and or support when making physical changes? Hi, Vida.
Hi, my name's Mac. I'm 19 years old and I identify as autistic and trans non-binary. My pronouns are she, he, they. I'm here today with my mom, Heather, and my service dog, Vida.
Hi, and I'm Mac's mom, Heather, and proud ally, and my pronouns are she and her.
I initially came out in 2017 as something along the lines of gay, but I also knew that I was starting to lean towards the idea of wanting to bind my chest. After attending multiple gender conferences and a couple years of self-discovery, I began to reach where I am today, a non-binary, trans-masculine individual. Being autistic and trans non-binary are both parts of who I am, and there are definitely times where these two identities interact. For instance, when I went to get top surgery, I struggled to get a needle. To some doctors, not being able to get a needle translated to I must not want top surgery that badly. Or, oh, you're autistic, are you sure you can make that decision for yourself? Particularly because I was doing it as a minor at 17. My parents have always been very supportive from day one, which I am forever grateful for. They may not always understand exactly how I feel or exactly what's happening, but they are always willing to do their very best and learn and grow alongside me, which is and has been so important to my journey.
We're here to answer a few questions that parents and our caregivers may have regarding their gender diverse children and youth who may or may not be neurodiverse.
What should I say or not say when talking to my child about their gender identity? Language is so important when discussing someone's identity. While some prefer not to use labels, for me, they are something I have found to be helpful on my discovery journey. It's also important to watch what you say and try not to make sweeping statements. I encountered things such as, when you were born, there was no doubt what sex you were, or you were definitely a little girl when you were growing up, or, oh, you're non-binary, therefore you must use they/them pronouns exclusively. Those can be very damaging statements, regardless of intention or reality. Sometimes it can take time for someone to discover who they really are, and that's okay.
The advice that I try to give myself is make the effort. It's important and it makes a huge difference. When in doubt, ask. Skip the justifications and excuses. Apologize when I make a mistake and then move on. Change and update my language as often as required. And let the grammar go. They and them is here to stay. When and how should I check in with my child?
Dialogue around gender can be difficult. Try and educate yourself the best you can prior to approaching your child, but also keep an open mind as to what your child wants to share with and teach you. Checking in with your child in a manner in which they feel safe and respected is so important. A trusting relationship can be hard to build and does take time, but having it goes a long way. Communication can happen in many forms. For me, I often struggled to get what I wanted to say out verbally, so I would write it down, and when I was ready, I would hand it off to whoever it was meant for.
One of the greatest gifts that Mac generously offered us was to invite us into their journey. Albeit hesitant at first and with lots of instructions on how to behave appropriately, but Mac became our cultural tour guide and we explored so much of the queer community. We went to concerts, poetry readings, festivals, conferences, and innumerable pride events.
Including following Ivan Coyote around the province.
Indeed. Again, being an active and enthusiastic, and probably most importantly, humble and open learner was key. There were many awkward and uncomfortable moments, but there were far more moments of joy and kindness that allowed us to embrace Mac's journey in a whole different way.
What specific things should I do to support my child?
I have two images I use when I think about how we want to support our children: a nest and a net. The nest is the place where our children can return to at any stage of their lives, a place where they can be pulled close, be vulnerable, receive additional support, and even regress a little bit if that's what they need. The nest provides a safe and loving place to rest and heal and grow. It builds or rebuilds self-confidence and strength that they need to leave the nest and fly again. The net is also ever present. and offers our children the freedom to feel confident in spreading their wings and taking risks, all the while knowing that we will always be there to catch them if they falter. The contrast between the nest and the net is what encourages me to not hold on too tightly to try to protect them, but rather to give them the support they need and then to release them to their independence with the knowledge that we have complete faith in them.
Do your best to never assume things about your child. Try not to make unnecessary judgments or put words in their mouth. Understand that the journey of self-discovery is never linear. The best thing you can do is love, embrace, and support your child in their journey, wherever they are at.
How do I know if this is who my child is or if it's just a phase?
Sometimes it can take time to reach a point where you feel comfortable with who you are. Learning and experimenting is all part of the journey. Personally, I went through a couple of different identities before I found one I felt comfortable with, and that's okay. Always validate your child's journey of self-discovery wherever they are at. Never dismiss it.
I found the book The Transgender Teen, a handbook for parents and professionals supporting transgender and non-binary youth by Stephanie Brill to be helpful. One of the most significant takeaways to my learning was to expect frequent and unexpected shifts in how our children identify, what pronouns they use, how they present themselves, etc. Knowing that this was normal and not confirmation of the idea that it might be a phase that they are in was really helpful. I think as parents, we can be anxious for our children to find their equilibrium and settle on an identity and pronoun, etc. I think we eventually realize that that is our need. Our discomfort in the constant learning curve, the flexibility and patience required to peacefully adapt to each new stage is incredibly taxing. Inevitably, we get things wrong, and the resulting corrections and conflict can be so hurtful and exhausting for both parents and teens alike. Anticipating a to and fro type of journey helped us to be better prepared and less reactive to what can feel like constant change.
How do we help our child or teen come out in a safe way? I think often you end up coming out in life multiple times, both in different contexts and sometimes as different things. Personally, as I mentioned when discussing my journey, I initially came out as gay and later came out as gender nonconforming. Establishing if an environment is safe to come out in can be tricky, but it should always be your decision. Outing someone is never okay, regardless of your intention. I decided to start small with just my immediate family, and then gradually came out to others around me. Not everyone has the luxury of having a safe family to come out to, however. Others may choose an accepting friend or a trusted person instead. Regardless of who you may or may not be out to, your identity is always valid.
As I said earlier, I think as parents, we can sometimes feel the need to provide a clear and concise label or coming out story for our friends and family in response to the changing identity, pronouns, and/or appearance of our children. We want to protect them from judgment and misunderstanding and potentially awkward social situations. As Mac so aptly points out, following our children's direction is paramount. In my opinion, our children's needs, and thus safety, must be our first priority, and we can adjust to whom and how and what we share and the information in a way that aligns with their wishes. If, on the other hand, we feel that our children are being too open in sharing and are putting themselves at risk, I believe that speaking to them honestly and openly about our concerns, while at the same time guarding ourselves against being too directive, is helpful. How do we decide and/or support when making physical changes?
That's a big one. It's okay to learn from other people and see yourself in and relate to their journey, but it's also important not to feel any peer pressure, such as the pressure to transition in a certain way.
I agree that this is a huge question, and it's a subject that people frequently ask me about. The permanence of physical change for our children is so frightening and such a huge burden of responsibility when the decision is lifelong and when our children may be underage. We may worry that our children will change their minds later, that they will be unhappy with their decision, that the judgment will be too great to bear, or any number of the other worries that plague us. I think the same guiding principles apply here as elsewhere. Listening to our children with an open heart and trying so very hard not to respond from a place of fear and uncertainty. Knowing that we can ask for time to digest before engaging in further conversation. Ensuring that we have gathered accurate and factual information rather than relying on what we may have read or heard. Exploring where there is potential flexibility or time sensitivity in whatever procedures are being considered. For instance, puberty blockers are very time sensitive. Making an appointment to speak with an expert, a doctor, or a specialist, and when possible, setting up appointments for both parents and children, both together and apart, with a mental health professional who specializes in gender identity. As we might expect, wait lists to see specialists and also for the procedures themselves are long, too long. This can be excruciating for a child who is experiencing gender dysphoria, so it is really important to be mindful of this and stay in close contact with your child during this waiting time. For some parents, however, it can also create a time buffer for those who are struggling and need further time for processing. I am pleased to share that our experience with Mac's top surgery was undeniably positive. Post-surgery, we observed an immediate change in Mac's comfort level, confidence, and happiness, and that is such a joy, particularly given what a tough decision it is to make.
What are the best places or people to help me understand and support my child? While it's important to provide space for your child on their journey of discovery, it's equally important to give yourself the space to learn and grow alongside your child. It's okay to take time to process what you're hearing, to reach out and find the supports you need.
Definitely. When Mac came out to us, I was almost completely ignorant on the subject of gender identity. I very quickly realized the urgency of learning everything that I could in order to support Mac in their gender journey. One thing that was immediately apparent was that Mac had educated themselves very thoroughly and that we needed to acknowledge and embrace their role as an expert in both their own experience and as an invaluable resource to us.
Support can come in so many forms. It can be other people, community resources, books, podcasts, articles, movies, TV shows, conferences, and anything in between.
True, there are endless supports available for parents who want to learn more, find support, or find other people. Simply start Googling and start exploring. You're such a good girl. Yeah, you did a good job.
You're so good. Did you breathe?
Oh, what?